coming. We're so excited about our first meeting of the spring semester. To start off, we have some different, just kind of logistical things about our chapter of the Music Teachers Association here. Things that we've gone over before if you've been here, but we have a lot of new faces, so we'll go through it again. So my name is Lauren Polston. I'm a senior in music education, choral studies here, and I'll be here for another year through spring 2024. Yeah, and then this is.
Hi, I'm Haley. I need to update the slide. I am an instrumental music ed major instrumental music ed and flute performance major. And I'm a sophomore here, so I'll be here until the end of fall of 2026. And so.
Hello everyone, I'm Caitlin. I'm an instrumental music ed major and I play the clarinet. It's my first year here.
I'm Jacob. I'm a choral music ed guy. I sing. I'm a sophomore. Yeah.
Okay. I'm Raina. I'm a historian. I'm a violin music ed major.
And since we have a lot of new faces, can you guys quickly introduce yourselves?
I'm Elise. I'm a freshman music ed instrumental major.
Hello, I'm Susie Perez. I'm a sophomore viola performance and music ed major.
I'm Melanie. I'm a freshman music ed instrumental major.
I'm Lauren. I'm a freshman music songwriting major.
I'm Chase. I'm actually a choral major.
Okay.
But I'm thinking about becoming a music teacher, and so I'm a freshman.
Okay, and then we also have our mission statements available. This is like the national level, which will be included in the PowerPoint that we send out later. So we're not going to read it right now. And the Virginian one as well. You can also read that at your own time.
So ours states that the Liberty University Music Teachers Association exists to provide educational and musical resources for students and teachers. This collegiate chapter serves to maintain a list of school music students available to the local community for private music lessons. We desire to equip college students who currently or wish to teach in the future.
Yeah, so if you guys are new or haven't done this yet, you can take out your phones and scan this interest survey, or if you want to wait till later, you can do that as well, since this will be sent out. And it's going to ask for information about yourself, and it'll also
give name, email, what your primary instrument is, how comfortable you are teaching, if you've taught in the past, just some basic information about you so we can add you to our roster for when people contact the school music. Welcome! Looking for student teachers. Yes. And then MTNA membership. If you'd like to purchase a national and state level membership, this is a great thing to add to your little toolkit. When you're teaching private lessons, they have so many great resources on their website, as well as conferences, webinars, kind of similar to NAFME, but for the private teaching aspect.
Now, I will say, for us to say you're on our list of private teachers, you have to have the membership. You cannot say you are a part of this if you do not.
No, that's not to say, yeah, you can still attend our meetings and be a part of our club, but we just can't list you on our student teacher roster without a membership. And then this is the list of current music teachers in the area, elementary, middle school, and high school for strings, choral, band, general music. Since we can't market ourselves as an independent music school, this is a great resource for you guys to reach out to independently and say, hey, I'm looking to teach students. Do you have anyone interested in lessons? And kind of get your name out there. And there's like 5 pages of schools that I compiled within like a 30-minute radius. So get on it. Yes. And
Okay.
now, Professor Bailey.
All right. Do you mind if I swap out computers?
No, not at all.
Great. We'll do an audio test just to make sure we've got that, because it says music, so we should probably.
it is. Okay. All right. Okay, well, I'm Professor Kyle Bailey. I know a lot of you from classes and different things in the School of Music, and excited to be here to talk to you today for a few minutes, 20 minutes or so, just to kind of introduce the topic of, integrating musicianship and music theory into private lessons and really beyond the private lesson sphere. So I've subtitled Lessons, Learning, and Theory, oh my. So there you go on that one. But really, I think in many ways, music theory gets a bit of a bad rap. It tends to be a challenging subject for many people. It tends to be pretty difficult. It tends to take a lot of time. You're a music student. You are feeling that in your soul probably right now. And I think in many ways, we don't really understand what music theory and really musicianship is. So I want to ask you guys, what do you think of when you hear the words music theory and musicianship? So let's just go around the room, shout it out. Let's see what you got. What do you think? What are things that come to mind? Things you do, things you know?
Scales.
Scales. Yeah, absolutely. Musical scales. What else?
For theory, I think of like the study behind like why music works.
Sure.
Because I guess I don't know if science is the right word,
okay.
but something along those
Yeah,
lines.
studying the why behind music. Yeah, that's good. Good. What about musicianship other than hard? Okay.
Ear training.
Ear training. Yeah. What that means, I don't know, but ear training. Yeah. Sight singing. Yes. Look at this. Sing it for me. Helpful for the vocalist in the room, right? Yeah. I think everybody else is an instrumentalist mostly, so we got one singer. That's great. I did vocals in undergrad too, so I feel that. Well, I think, oh no, can be one thing when we hear that word music theory, like, oh dear, a lot of those freshman students, and many of you were there not too long ago, and some of you are freshmen this year, they have this great fervor for classes, and then they get in there and they're like, whoa, time out, buddy. Where are the lessons? Where's the choir? Where's the band? Where's the orchestra? Well, they're over there, but this is music theory class. And then I think musicianship is Jesus is my only hope, really. I think it's one of those things where it's very, very difficult. And we can get so focused in on things like scales, right? And Roman numerals, and form, and analysis, and side singing, and dictations. And those are all good things. But in reality, folks, that isn't really what music theory is. And so our talk today is not only going to talk about how you can integrate music theory into lessons and why it's beneficial and what that would look like from a practical standpoint, but it really has a couple different parts. The first part is to reframe music theory to help us understand what music theory really is as a discipline, okay? And then from there, we are going to talk about the benefits of using music theory instruction along with private teaching for improved performance. And then we're going to finish out with two different avenues of the same sphere, which is what do I do with that knowledge? Okay, how can I practically teach some music theory? What are things that I should teach to a younger student, an intermediate student, maybe a more advanced student? And then what can I do with this music theory? The skills that are resultant from that, how can I use those? So we kind of have four different things we're hitting there. And so let's begin with the reframing of music theory and musicianship. So I have several resources here which are just there for you guys to thumb through if you wish. But this is the book. It's called Teaching Approaches in Music Theory, Overview of Pedagogy and Philosophies. And it's the book on how to teach people music theory. Okay, it's been around for several decades, and it's in its second edition, and I think the gentleman is retired, so probably won't have any more editions. But this is what he says in this book. He says, whenever theory is mentioned, almost all students, and even some teachers, think of scales. Do, re, mi, sol, fetch. Roman numerals. Key signatures. And he says, while these items would be part of almost any beginning level of college study, they really represent a pre-theory stage. They are no more part of the genuine study of music than the knowledge of the alphabet, verbs, or commas is a part of the study of literature. So in many ways, a lot of what we do in an undergraduate music theory classroom they're really kind of the fundamentals, the basics that allow us to then have some real true study of music and as a discipline and as something there. He says it like this, he goes on a little bit later. He said, music theory is not a subject like a pharmacy with labels to learn and prescriptions to fill, but rather it is an activity, more like composition or performance. It's something we do. The activity is theorizing, that is, thinking about what we hear and hearing what we think about. And I, being the author here, Rogers, I would even include thinking about what we think. So in other words, what he's trying to say is we get so bogged down in music theory as labeling things that happen in music and scales, and it's in this key, and it had this chord progression, and there's the tonic, and there's the subdominant, and there's the dominant. But music theory is a discipline of thinking and theorizing about music. It's, boy, I heard something, and that made me wonder this. And I noticed that 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 composers did the same thing. How did they get it to sound like that? Why doesn't it sound like that when I do that? Thinking and integrating the thinking. And so Rogers really reframes music theory from this set of labels and a thing that we are just fulfilling, but really an activity that's more like composition. And so he creates this diagram with these 3 different parts to help us really understand how music theory comes to play and what it looks like for us as musicians. And so he has 3 different things. He has thinking over here on one side. He has listening and these kind of arrows. And he has a slash, which he calls the link between the 2 sides of this coin, if you will, thinking and listening. And so for Rogers, he says that thinking is really mind training. It's part of that study of those fundamental aspects, making us aware of some of the norms, some of the Roman numerals, some of the TSDT, some of those basic fundamentals of scales and key signatures and higher notes versus lower notes and beats. And that's definitely part of the whole mind training thing, but it's not all that there is. There's the link, this middle section, which is music analysis. And what music analysis does, it allows us to connect the other side of the coin, the listening, the ear training. So really we have the mind over on one side, we have the ear on the other side, and analysis allows us to have this cycle where we can interact with the 2. We can say, wow, I'm hearing that thing, and I can figure out what that thing is. And then I can think about that thing. Or I had a thought about something, and then I can engage that with analysis and sound to more fully understand that. So he has this cycle of back and forth of listening and thinking with that link connection point between the 2 being analysis. He says it this way: thinking and listening feed into one another. The more thinking that takes place, the more there is to hear. And the more listening that takes place, the more there is to ponder. I don't know if you've had this happen, but I've experienced this. Sometimes you'll hear a new tune you've never heard before from any style, right? It could be the latest, greatest T Swift tune, if she has any of those, okay? It could be a Brahms symphony you've never heard before, which if you haven't heard any of them, go listen, okay? It'll change your life, all right? You're like, oh, Brahms, yeah, symphony, yeah, got it. Okay, and a lot of times at the first listen, you may enjoy it. There may be certain things you hear, but I've noticed that over time, I hear more. And there are things I didn't notice the first time through. And maybe subtle things. Maybe they weren't so subtle, right? And I was just too focused on something else. But then sometimes I can begin to think and go, wow, they use that same melodic thing over here in the orchestration, and the next thing you know, someone's singing it over there. I didn't even notice. And so the idea is the more you listen, the more you think, and the more you think, the more you listen. They feed into one another. I think a great example of this is Beethoven's Symphony 5. First movement of Beethoven's Symphony 5. It's in a little theory analysis for you. It's in C minor, this movement, and it has this iconic. Yes, we know that one. Now what's interesting is that Beethoven takes that little, very simple rhythmic device and weaves it through the entire first movement. So we'll listen to an opening little excerpt. Da-da-da-dum. Now as I'm listening, I'm hearing that rhythm go throughout all those different instruments. That ba-ba-ba-ba is everywhere. And we're just a few minutes in, maybe we move a little bit down the road, about 3/4 of the way through. Ah. So in this very simple example, something that we could engage our ear in and then get our mind involved in is the use of that very simple rhythmic device. But we could even go a little bit further. I mentioned the instrumentation. He changes the instrumentation and register to create like this cascading effect. Ba 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 ba, right? And he changes the pitches, but that rhythm is the feature of the whole symphony. Well, the first movement at least. Okay. So that allows me, that's an example of that feeding into one another. And the more we can dig into just that simple little rhythm, and the more we can think about it, and the more we can listen, the better we can understand what Beethoven, in this one movement, is attempting to do. And so really, analysis is there to bring in that understanding from the outside. So analysis always does include, what somebody else said, what somebody else thought, what the rhythm actually is. So we do have to have some of those Roman numerals and things of that nature there to help us. But it helps us, I think, as Lauren said, grasp the why. What's going on behind the piece? Now that's what music theory really is as a discipline. Okay, that's great. Let's see if it really is what it pans out to be. Music theorists, generally speaking, are college professors and researchers. So they will research. I went to a conference this past November where it was 4 days of music theory professors from around the country and the world getting together to share new research. And some of it was teaching related, but some of it was about music. And this is an example of listening and thinking in a scholarly format. So generic forms, irony, and authenticity in the AABA songs of the Rolling Stones from 1963 to 1971. Liberty, 1971. That's why I picked that article, by the way. Right? We started in 1971. You didn't know that? Okay. Anyways, moving on. Now, this is somebody is aware of previous research. AABA, that's a type of song form, sometimes called a classic song form or modern song form, was in decline in popular music in the 1960s, yet the Rolling Stones use it extensively in a crucial part of their careers. So he's saying it wasn't working, but the Rolling Stones were doing something about it. I was listening, and I noticed that they kept using it. And so what I did is I studied 138 songs that were in this form, and I compared it to how they used it. I looked at elements such as starting and ending of the bridge, which would be the B section. I looked at harmonies, I looked at the melodic forms, and I compared it to what other people had said to try to help people better understand this form and its use in that specific time period by the specific musician. And it all sprouted from someone thinking and listening. But it's not just the Rolling Stones. This is a recent article in Music Theory Online. Ravel's sound, timbre, and orchestration in his late works, Jennifer Beavers. So going through this, you can read it all, but the main idea is she noticed some very unique use of timbre in his orchestrations. And so she did some pretty high-level analysis and study of his works to try to help better add to the scholarship, but help others better understand how he manipulated those instruments and how he used them to transform expectation, to mark form, and create meaning. Well, that sounds like that might be useful for a musician. Maybe someone playing Ravel. One of the challenges, though, as we kind of move into this second part, and this maybe is the case for a lot of people, where does the rubber meet the road? A lot of private instructors seldomly feel equipped to incorporate music theory in ear training. And you may feel that way. And a lot of people in the real world teaching private lessons feel that way. Said, I don't know how to do it. I made it through music theory, but that's about it. I survived. And then they moved on. There's other things for instructors to consider. They're often limited by the length of a lesson. It's not unusual that a new student, a beginning student, might just have a half-hour lesson. Maybe an hour, but half hour is probably a lot more likely. And so you've got the length of a lesson. You've got the student's desires. If the young student, or maybe an adult, isn't engaged in what you're listening, they're going to find it very difficult to continue to come back. Maybe there are parents involved. They say, no, I want my kid to be able to play flute and be able to join band in middle school. And they're an upper elementary student, and your job is to help them learn flute, right? And then there's also the performance preparation, getting ready for, maybe it's a studio class, maybe it's an end of semester performance, right? Maybe it's that Christmas concert. So there are a lot of limitations and challenges there. But the problem is, if we focus on the notes, rhythms, and performance aspects alone, we remove a substantial part of the human experience from our music. You are all thinking right now, correct? You're not making music. Chances are you think a whole lot more than you make music. That's a significant part of who we are as people. And so when we take that out of the equation, we do a disservice. And really what happens is musicians become performance machines that don't think about content. They don't think about meaning. They just sing. They just play. Now, it might sound beautiful, but that's all they do. And that's kind of a shame, I think, that we leave out this whole other aspect of what we could be doing. We could be thinking, we could be expressing, we could be exploring. Now, that's a nice idea, but the reality is researchers have proved the benefit of incorporating music theory and even music history. Who would have thought music history? Dr. Hugo would be happy about that. Into performance and the benefits of it. So this is an article that was published several years ago, about 4 or 5 years ago. Investing Time. Teacher research observing the influence of music history and theory lessons upon student engagement and expressive performance of an advanced high school string quartet. So we're not going to go through the whole article, but I've put the abstract up here, and we aren't going to go through the whole thing either because that's a lot of text. But I'll give you the short of it, okay? The short and quick is this. A teacher at a high school who had an advanced string quartet, so probably maybe an arts high school, she doesn't really say, but some sort of high school with a decent string program, decided to do a little experiment. They were learning, Schubert, 2 movements of a Schubert quartet. And they decided to teach 2 movements in 2 different ways. The first movement kind of taught the standard way, whatever they would normally do in terms of performance and preparation. The second movement, the teacher decided to try something different. They're going to do the standard thing, but along with that, they began to study the composer, study the work, study musical things that happened in the work, and began to have discussions with these high school students about that second movement, learning about some different things that came up, how they interact with one another, and how it all came to play. Then, they had a separate set of judges who were not associated with this teacher in any way, assess the performance of the first and second movement by this string quartet. And they rated them. And they also took feedback from the teacher right? Here's how I thought it went. They took feedback from these high school students, and they discussed how they thought it went. And you can see kind of the takeaways here, A through C, give you an idea there. But I think where the rubber meets the road is the performance. And so this chart is taken from the article, and in the right side, left side, you can see the rating 1 out of 5 that was given for tone quality, intonation, rhythm, balance of blend, and technique. And so overall, they had very high praise for this group. But notice that the first movement is a little bit lower in a few areas in comparison to the second movement. Now some are the same, right? But some are a little bit better. Top, very nice color in theme. Nice group underlined sound. Group sounded quite good, but could be explored much more. The balance among the members can help. Balance to the bottom, you can read all that. But the idea being that not only was it of great benefit to the student and the instructor, but it also yielded strong results in expressive performance for those students performing in this group. So one of the benefits here of incorporating music theory instruction and really getting that mind working along with the listening, along with the analysis, is it's better performance. And it's more fulfilling for the teacher, and it's more fulfilling for the student. That sounds like a win-win-win to me. So now the question for us and for you is, what do we do? How do we incorporate lessons in a meaningful way? Or how do we even prepare ourselves to do that? Well, there are a couple things that you can do if you're looking to incorporate lessons. I think any young student has to have a lot of that mind training, where it's just fundamentals. It's, hey, you need to learn to read notes. That's kind of an important thing if you want to exist in the musical world, right? You want to learn an instrument. Even the singers need to learn to read notes, right? That's right. They got to read those notes, okay? They need to learn those key signatures. They need to learn about time signatures and meter. They need to learn about rhythms. Your piano players, pretty soon, they need to learn about harmony, right? Now, here's the thing. It doesn't have to be this thing where you say, now listen, Jeffrey, it's time to learn your music theory. Let's learn the key signatures. No, it can be something that's organic, that's part of what you're teaching them, but it needs to be taught. You say, well, that's a key signature, and here's what it's doing. And it comes from this scale, and we've been learning about how to finger those half steps and whole steps in these different notes. And you're building these scales. Here, let me play one for you. Why don't you try it too? Simple things like that. Doesn't have to be a rigid instruction, and maybe it could be, but it doesn't have to be. I'm also a big fan of ear training. Obviously, you kind of have to do what's appropriate for this type of student that you're interacting with, but very fundamental, basic things I think are necessary for everybody. Contour. Did that note go higher or lower? Say, well, instrumentalists are going to play the notes. They are, but are they aware of what they're playing? That's important for them to know. Singers are going to sing the notes. Well, yeah, but are they aware? Intervals, maybe formal intervals, but maybe not. Maybe they don't need to hear those. But maybe they need to be aware, like, well, that's a larger leap, even in generic terms, and that's a step. Intonation, oh my goodness. Violinists need a lot of help there, except present company. Just teasing, rated. Okay? No, she's wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. There's a joke. It says, what do you call a minor second? 2 violinists playing in unison. Yeah, you've heard that one? Yeah, maybe not the case here. But intonation is incredibly important. And I would focus, too, on the feeling of rhythm and beat. And depending on what type of music you're teaching your student, if appropriate, even the groove. Not just like, well, this is the time signature, this is the meter, but what does that feel like? How do we listen to that? How can we interact with that? What does it feel like to tap the beat and the pulse? What does it feel like when our things lock in with the beat and when our rhythms don't? What else can we do? Let's say we have a student that's maybe past that fundamental stage. They've gotten some of those things. What are some more things that we can help them with? Now, a lot of these over here are more harmony specific, and I think a lot of times instrumentalists can be a little bit, depending on their instrument, non-pianists, let's say, can be a little bit weaker in harmony understanding. So something that can be very helpful is bringing out this better understanding of harmony. Again, it doesn't have to be something that's very rigid, but even something of, hey, you're playing this piece, and they're using only really two types of triads, major and minor. And notice how when you're playing this, that's a minor chord, and that might impact how you perform it. Simple things of that nature. You could actually go into diatonic harmony and harmonic inversion if necessary, but I think one that's useful for all instrumental types is the difference of voice leading, and even singers as well. Steps, singing steps higher or lower, playing steps higher or lower, playing leaps, which can create their own performance challenges, right? But bringing your students' attention to that, helping them understand it, and then engaging their ear. Intervals as well, qualities of listening. What quality is this chord? There it is. What quality do you think it is? Right? And then for the singers, if you're teaching singers, teach them solfege. Help them to bring awareness. One of the challenges with the singer, for most singers, is that they are unaware of the pitches they are singing. Because guess what? They just sing a song, and they know not what the notes are. They just sing a song, happy every day. They just sing a song. You like my musical theater tune? Yeah? That was pretty good. I just wrote that. That wasn't too bad. But when you bring solfege into the picture, and even maybe having them sing their exercises and what they're learning in solfege, or sitting down and playing some things with them and having them mimic you in solfege, brings an awareness that an instrumentalist gets intuitively that a singer doesn't get. Because the instrumentalists, when they do this, when they do this, when they do this, when they do this, they know what it is. Except those transposing instruments. But that's another story for another day. But they know what it is, right? Yeah, well, everybody have that moment where they learned about the transposition. You're like, I've been lied to my whole life. Yeah, maybe, maybe not. But in either case, that solfege really helps that mid-level student try to get a little bit further down the road. What if you have that student that just knocks the socks off and is just an advanced student from beginning to finish? Well, go for it, especially if your student really feels like, I want to study some music in college. That's not just it's not a fun thing I'm doing anymore. I'm in high school and I want to go for this as a career. Do them a service and try to teach them as much as they want to know. Teach them those big level things. You've been working on this first movement of this sonata, and it's called sonata form, and there are certain things that are happening here. You've got this theme that opens up and then it changes keys over here. Did you notice that? Yeah, I noticed that. That happens in almost all of them. And certain ones of certain time periods by certain composers will do this normally. And you're playing one of those. But here's another one that I can play. And it does something a little different. Oh, wow. Right? Maybe chromatic harmony, I think, depending on what they're looking for. Elements of style is really a critical thing. If you have a student, we have a former student. Her name is, what's her married name now? Can't remember her married name. Anyway, she has a vocal studio that she started locally. And she has a ton of students that are interested in musical theater. And so part of their instruction is learning more about musical theater and getting that into the vein of what they're doing from a performance standpoint. If that's who you are, or maybe you're doing commercial music, or maybe you're doing songwriting, or maybe you're doing classical music, or a methods book of some sort, incorporate those elements of style. I also encourage you to really engage people in listening on these levels. Chromatic harmony can be helpful, that chord's outside the key. And you don't need to go into details of this is a secondary dominant, and that's a Neapolitan. You don't need to do that. You can if you want to, if the student wants to learn. You can always do that. But you can just say, hey, that's outside the key. Do you hear that? Do you hear how that was this type of a thing? Listening for form, big picture forms. Oh yeah, there was that second theme. Oh yeah, there was that rhythm. Ba 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 bum bum bum. There it is again. Right? Music as narrative. This is a pretty advanced listening thing, but music theorists will argue sometimes that music is kind of like a play, and there are different people that are acting out a scene. So there's some sort of narrative story that's being portrayed. And so that is something that you can certainly explore with upper level students. It becomes a little difficult, and sometimes certain pieces don't lend themselves to that. and that's okay. But those are some options there. All right, so what about you? We've got some ideas, but what can you do? You got to work on you. Anytime you're a teacher, you can't be a good teacher until you're good at what you do, right? And so, yeah, you're studying music, but that's the beginning, really, and it's a lifelong study. So study the content, whether it's music theory, whether it's your instrument, whether it's going and learning more from other people at the MTNA National Conference or the Virginia Conference, where they can help you be a better teacher. If you're looking at trying to explain some things theory related, write down those explanations, things that are musical. Teach concepts to families and friends, record videos. I'm going to add one more, it's not in my PowerPoint, but practice listening and thinking. Practice it. Listen to a song you don't know, a work you don't know, a style you're not familiar with. And listen to enjoy, but listen to think. What do I hear? What do I notice? Be creative. Especially when you're working with younger kids, you want to do more than lecture. And lecture certainly could be part of it. But look for games, activities, readings, videos, things that can be more fun, especially for younger kids and for older kids. And I always caution folks with this one, just be age appropriate. It's difficult when you're fluent in your thing to find that right balance. Even for me as a teacher, right? Teacher of college level students, there's a wide variety of folks. And it's easy to do too much or not enough. So you really have to try to find what is age appropriate. Is it appropriate that I walk through all 12 key signatures with Sarah, who's 9 years old, who's been working on learning violin, and she's doing really well, and she's starting to get those tapes taken off, and she's actually getting and it actually sounds pretty decent? Well, maybe not all 12, but maybe you could start her with 5. And say, yeah, I want you to work on playing the scales in this. The tapes are coming off, you're getting those fingerings, you're feeling it properly, but it's time to learn some more scales, right? So, but work that in an age-appropriate way. And always consider what the student wants, what the parents want. Obviously, if it's an adult, right, they're going to be the student. But if it's a child or a younger kid, their mom or dad are the ones paying for this, right? So, you have to keep that in mind. And hopefully, they're supportive of, you teaching their student well. And then I always say, look for those teachable moments. What are things that you can impart to them, whether or not they're specifically related to theory or just bring an awareness. It's amazing for me as a student on the other side of this, teaching, things I remember my professors and teachers saying in the past. And for them, it was such a simple little thing that they didn't even think about. It wasn't a big prepared lesson or a lecture. It was just a simple little thing that they just knew. Somebody told them or they figured out. And they just said it. And I go, wow. I never thought about music in the same way. Some of those I can still think about where I was, what they said. Wow, it's impressive. Now I need a couple participants because we have an activity to try out. Have anyone who's willing to participate in an undisclosed activity? All right, what's your name again?
Susie.
Susie, stand up. Let's give Susie a hand. All right, so, whoops, there we go. So this is called beat hop, okay? And so this is something that you can maybe do with an early elementary student to help them try to get awareness of the beat. So here's Susie, put on your early elementary hat, okay? So you're 7, maybe 8 years old, 9 years old, maybe something along those lines. And I'm gonna play this, Susie. Are you having a good day?
Yes.
Okay, good, good. And I want you to do your best to jump up and down to match the music. Can you do that for me? Uh-oh, Susie, this could be short-lived. Oh, that's the wrong one. All right, folks.
I can bounce.
Yeah, let's all do it together. Do a little bounce in your chair. That's right. Yeah, that's great. You know, this is called the march. And we actually march back and forth, one foot the other foot. That's excellent. And And so Susie, that thing's called the beat, and we've been working in that in our lessons, right? We've been striving to get your playing a little bit more in the beat. And so what we want to do is work on listening to that and driving that home, which will help you in your rhythms, okay?
Okay.
All right, so now there's something else we listen to. This one is a little bit different. So I want you to try to sway to the beat this time. Now this one's a lot different. It's flowing, right? Kind of makes you want to dance around a little bit.
Floods of mercy breaking round us, weights they folded long have bound us. Jesus comes.
Now this uses a different type of meter. That's one we haven't talked about yet. It's called compound. It's a flowing meter rather than a more rigid back and forth thing. So that's something to think about. And I have some other examples we'll listen to later. But thank you, Susie. Go ahead and have a seat. Let's begin. But something simple like that, where you're just bringing awareness, using real music of whatever style, and even things that your student might be working through, but it just helps them engage that thinking side. Now, I need another volunteer. This one's going to be a little more involved. Do we have another volunteer? Susie can't do it. She's already done it. How about our president? Yeah? Okay, come on up. Yeah. Come on up, please. And so this is called acting the part. So this kind of pulls on the narrative ideas and aspects of music. So I'm going to let you listen to, listen to this piece. And I want you to try to think about, don't look at the music. Don't look at the music. Yeah, I know, it's tough.
Sorry.
It's tough. That's okay. But I want you to think about what you're hearing and try to describe it. Not necessarily a musical standpoint, but as if it's a story. What kind of story do you hear?
It sounds really dramatic.
Yeah.
It could be like a dramatic love story. It could be a tragedy if someone dies in the end.
Oh, wow, what a chipper story. This has become so quickly.
It could just depict everyday life, like whether sad or just mundane. It just reminds me of something that maybe would play like in a movie, possibly. During different
A little bit of
scenes.
sorrow,
Mhm.
but still okay. Yeah? Because it's not hopeless. There's still a lot of joy and beauty in the mundanity of the music. But now there's good news, Lauren. You haven't made it there yet, but there's more joy. Now, you know what made that change, by the way? It was this minor feel, focusing in on minor keys, and the shift over to a major key. So, anyways, thank you. Grab a seat. Very good. Give a hand. So some simple things along those lines can be very, very useful. So we're going to wrap up with just a few things of ways to make these theory skills work for you and ways you can use what you know, not only in lessons, but beyond. So this is the beyond part. Transcription. Surprisingly enough, people can't transcribe music very well. And you're like, he's speaking to me. No, I'm not. No one in this room that I know of. But it is a coveted skill. I've been paid dollars to transcribe for people, right? Professionals who can do it themselves, but they don't have the time, and they want somebody who can do it for them. So transcription skills. Now AI is getting better at being able to do this, but it still doesn't have it quite yet, and I think they're a long ways off because they can't separate different things like a human brain that's trained. Arranging skills. You say, I'm not into the arranging things, it's just not me. And that's okay, you don't have to be. But maybe it's simple arrangements. We have students who will go out and build their skills and just do, take the latest, greatest tune X and make a middle school level band chart. That's it. Because some middle school band somewhere wants to play that tune because they can't play anything else. Something you can help at college prep courses. So maybe this tends to be something that's in a little bit bigger of a city, but some sort of, hey, this is a summer music theory or oral skills college prep course. Or maybe sometimes part of a music school that's there. They may have some sort of thing like that. It's not smaller cities, but larger ones. This one's great in many places, homeschool co-ops. A lot of homeschool co-ops, or several in this area, but they're looking for people to come teach, and they're looking for people who can offer classes and sign up high school students, middle school students to come and just learn more about music. Tutoring's always a great option, private tutoring for young kids or not so young. And this one requires a little bit more education, but adjunct teaching is always an opportunity as well. Normally you have to have a master's degree to be able to be involved in collegiate level adjunct teaching. Couple closing thoughts for you. Big thing, stay current on discipline related content. The worst thing for a teacher is to stop learning. So the best thing for you, if you want to teach applied lessons, keep taking lessons. Do you know who Dr. Mark Greenewalt is? Any of you folks in the room? He's one of our vocal professors here. Did you know he takes voice lessons? He still takes voice lessons with his teacher. Not every week, but like every couple weeks, once a month. He has a voice teacher on the West Coast that he studied with for a number of years, and he still takes lessons with his teacher. I still learn things about music theory. I read journal articles, I go to conferences, and many of us in the building do that. We're not done learning, we're just learning different things. But they make us better at being what we do, and the same thing's true for an applied teacher. If you're looking at that theory side, explore music theory pedagogy journals. They have a lot of down-to-earth things. Theory journals can be very academic, but the pedagogy is so focused on the teaching. It talks about techniques for ear training and things to think about if you're teaching. A lot of times it's classroom related, but you can always kind of pare that down for what you think is appropriate. Make connections with other people. Get to know other people in your music community, other teachers, and most importantly, be the best instructor that you can for the glory of God. If we do our work for our pockets and for, quote, good music making, we've really wasted it all. We have to do our work for God's glory and His glory alone. And hopefully and prayerfully, good music making will happen. We'll be reimbursed for our time, which is always a good thing. But it's all about the heart behind that. I have my list of some resources there, my couple that we used here, and I have a few of these as well if you're interested to kind of thumb through some of those. But thank you all so much for inviting me to talk. Much appreciated. Turn it over, or are we finished for the day?
Did you have any time for a few questions?
I do, if we have some questions, absolutely.
If anyone have any questions, we're going to open it up for Professor Bailey. I had a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so I don't know if everyone here would end up teaching singers, or if it's only a couple of us,
Yeah.
but do you think it is beneficial, even if it's a different instrumentalist, that singers to learn piano? Because you kind of mentioned, it's out there,
Yeah.
but even if they learn just the basics, do you think it's helpful for ear training purposes?
I think it's helpful for everyone to have an awareness of the sound in a tactile sense, right? I would say if someone is, really says, I want to go study music in college and I want to do that professionally, they should learn piano. I really think that. I think guitar maybe would be a close second, but they really need to have something chordal under their belt that's instrumental. Now, if we have a lot of solo instrumental folks, got some flute folks, clarinet folks, several other folks as well. I think it's less critical at that point, right? Like, someone studying college, yes, you should, but I think it's less critical because there's a tactile piece, right? So I think the singer should have something, but I think at the same time, like, what are the goals of the student, right? If the student, like I've worked with people and been around others where, you get contacted by somebody who wants lessons and they want this. I just want to learn to play these pop songs I grew up singing back in the 80s. And I just want to learn chords on piano to play these pop songs. That's all I want. Wonderful. They can have the joy of music making, and you could get to teach them that. Do they need to, learn a Bach invention? No. You need to teach them some chords at piano, and that's it, And somebody might say, my mom used to play flute, and I just want to be able to pick this up and play like 4 or 5 different pieces that my mom used to play for me when I was a little girl. Like, then you teach them those pieces and you forget about the piano. So I think you have to think of the goals of the person. And if they say, no, I really want to learn more, you say, well, then piano's the next step. So yeah, that's what I think. Other questions?
I have one more.
Yeah?
And this might answer, I don't know if anyone else is thinking this way, but so what are your thoughts on method books? Because I tend to go to them, but if you think it's a bad idea, I can read.
No, I mean, I think a method book is very useful, and in many ways it's standard in certain things. I think like violin, the Suzuki methods, and those approaches, those are standard approaches that it's kind of really expected that most folks will go through that. Not necessarily totally, but that's like, oh, of course you went through that type thing. So I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I think the challenge can be twofold. Sometimes the music isn't really that interesting for young players and young students. And when that's the case, they can easily lose interest. So I think that's definitely a detractor. I think another detractor is it can pigeonhole you into like, I've got to do this method book. But I think at the same time, it's a great resource to work through. You know, like I learned piano as a child. I did the Alfred Basics series when I first started. You know, went through several of those books. If any piano folks maybe did those, but I went through several levels of those, which was very useful for me. But I should have probably had other things introduced in along with it. So I think if you're going to do a methods book, I say go for it and go for the method, especially as a young teacher. But be open to like incorporating other things. Like, yeah, we're gonna do the methods book, but now we're gonna put that away and we're gonna take a break for a month and we're gonna do some other things. And we're gonna use some of the skills that you've developed to play other things that you enjoy. What would you like to learn, right? What would your mom like to learn? Well, we'd love them to be able to play some Christmas songs for us. You know, it's October, wonderful. Well, we'll work up 3 Christmas songs. We'll take a little break from the methods book. And that way he can play those. What a great thing. Right, for him, whoever the student is, but also for the family that gets to partake in that too. So I think both and, right?
Do you like it for theory too?
Well, there aren't as many that I'm as much aware of. I think you could if you find something. The hard part about the piano method books tend to be the best at incorporating theory along the way, and that is mostly because theory is a fairly piano-centric discipline. Right, so I think that's certainly something that comes up. There aren't a ton of, quote, music theory books that are more programmed to go along with lessons. So I think in many ways you're more of a supplement that you're bringing in. Yeah. Okay. Anything else? All right, well, thank you all so much. I hope it's been beneficial. And anything else from the president?
Yeah, I mean, does anyone, any newcomers, do y'all have any questions about how to join MTNA or anything about the interest survey that we put on? Okay. Did you have something that Caitlin mentioned?
Yes.
I saw she texted us after she left.
So we have, if you haven't been here before and you're interested in joining the club, we have a sheet over here. We are not an official club yet through Liberty because we just started in the fall. So currently we have $0. So we're working on that. But we need signatures to say like, when we turn it in to SGA saying like we've got people in the club. So if you'd like to sign it, it's right there on the table. And also we have snacks, so grab some on your way out.
Food. Yes, please. And then we do have some exciting meetings coming up. We have a teacher from Roanoke who's planning to come talk to us about how she's taught music for years and years and years, so there will be a lot to learn from her. We're planning to have either another teacher or a local music teacher come for another month, and then we're planning to put on in the late spring, we're planning to put on a community event for some kids, or if we have, students who want to come, we're planning to do that one weekend coming up. So yes, any questions that come up, you guys can email me or any of our officers. But yeah, we're good to go. Y'all have a great night.